Hi everybody, it's me Bree of Evermore Reads and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today we are going to be having a video that I haven't done before, and I'm not sure how often I'm going to do it, but it is going to be a November reading list. Yes, these are the books that I am hoping and trying my best to read in November. Now, I don't really often do reading lists because my reading is kind of all over the place. I am not as disciplined as I would like to be, and that's because life comes at you go fast. So many things happen. I have the best laid plans, and then life happens, and I don't get to read every day. I don't get to read as often as I would like to read. I'm tired. Before you know it, the month is finished, and I've only read 2 or 3 books. That happened to me in September and October, but I really don't want that to happen to me for November. And so I've made a reading list and I'm going to share that with you today. Now my reading list has about 7 books on it, which is extremely ambitious because I usually read 1 book a week or 1 book every week and a half, which equates to 3 to 4 books a month. So for me to go from 3 to 4 to 7 books in 1 month is very ambitious, but you know what, I have a plan, I have a timeline, and I'm going to make it happen. So without further ado, here are my November reading book wish lists. Does that make sense? I'm sure you know what I mean. So the first book on my wish list for November is Princess of Thornwood Drive by Kalia Moru. Now, I actually spoke about this book in my book haul a couple videos ago, but you don't have to watch that video, although it would be nice if you do. I'm gonna restate right here what this book is about. This was an arc sent to me, and it's the very first book I wanted to read for November, God's willing, because this book comes out on November 7th. It was an arc sent to me by the wonderful folks at Read Forever Pub, and every time I receive an arc, I really try my best to read it on time, especially if I receive it before publication date. If I receive it after publication date, I have no obligation to read it on time. I read it whenever I get to it. But for books like these, I really want to read it on time. Today is October 31st. I don't know when this video is going to be out, but that means I have about 8 days to read it. I am still not even halfway through my current read, which is Babel. So I don't know how I'm gonna make it before the 7th of November when this book is published, but I really want to. Now you may be wondering, okay Brianna, what is this book about? Well, this book was really intriguing to me because it is set in Caribbean/Trinidadian folkloric setting. I don't know to what extent, but based on how the book is described, we have 2 sisters, Lane and Alyssa. Lane is the elder sister and Alyssa is the youngest. Alyssa is paralyzed and nonverbal. She got these disabilities from horrific scars and trauma that she got from an accident that claimed her parents' life. And so now Lane is Alyssa's primary caretaker, and Lane doesn't really have the space or the ability to really deal with her grief and how devastating it is for her life to change in this way because she has to take care of her sister. And so Lane finds herself drowning emotionally and mentally in all of the difficulties that are in her life now. On the other hand, we have Alyssa, who, even though she is nonverbal and disabled, half of the story is told from her perspective because she lives in an alternate reality where she lives in a fantasy world filled with Caribbean mythological beings and mythos, and in this world she has to save her sister from falling for this very evil being that can separate the sisters from each other for forever. And so I've never heard of a story like this. The premise sounds very interesting to me. It sounds like it could be a little bit tricky because we have the two sisters, which is what this book is based on, and it seems like the first part of the book, or half of the book, is going to be from Lane's perspective. She is going to be our perspective, our narrator, who's going to be taking us through what's happening in reality. And then we have Alyssa, who is going to be our another perspective, our second narrator, who is going to be taking us through what is happening in this parallel fantasy universe. Will these two universes overlap? Will one universe reign supreme? What exactly is going to happen in this story? I'm not sure. The premise is very intriguing to me. Kalia Moreau is a debut author. And besides the very interesting, kind of strange premise of this story, I really am looking forward to see how she represents characters with disabilities, like Alyssa, how she's going to represent mental illness, because Lane is described as really going through a really difficult time mentally. And I want to see how she's going to explore the relationship between sisters, how they deal with grief, how they comfort each other. And this third kind of evil character, who in Alyssa's fantasy world seems to want to break up the sisters, but who I think in the real world is probably going to be a guy, this Jesus-like figure who swoops in to kind of save Lane and take care of her and protect her. And her losing her parents, that's going to appeal to her. But in his effort to protect and take care of Lane, he's probably going to want to get rid of Alyssa, put her in like a quote-unquote home to receive care. These are all assumptions that I'm making of this book, but I'm really interested and intrigued to see how all of these themes and motifs are tackled. And I don't know, I will tell you all how it goes. It also has a really, really beautiful cover, and I can't wait to post about it, talk more about it, because I haven't seen this anywhere online, and I'm just really excited to get to this one. The next book that we're gonna try to read in November is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. This was also sent to me by the publishers, the wonderful folks at Harper Voyager. And guys, I am super excited to read this. I received this after it was published, so I was not as rushed to read it because I already had some books on the go. But November, I'm definitely going to be getting to this because this sounds so exciting. It is described as being perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas and R.F. Kuang, but based on the description of this book, I think it would be better for fans of Leigh Bardugo, and let me tell you why. So in this book, we follow our main character, whose name is Taliesin. Taliesin lives in a world where her empire, her country, her homeland is under siege by the Night Empire. And the Night Empire is intent on destroying any threat to its rule and conquering the entire world. However, Taliesin's country, her home, is not going down so easy, and they are constantly fighting each other in this elemental war called the Hurricane Wars. Now, there is a sort of elemental magic in this series, and we have the elemental light versus dark powers. And Taliesin is holding a deep secret that she possesses light power, which was thought to have been eradicated and extinct. And this light power of hers can be the key to defeating the Night Empire. On the other hand, we have our main male character, whose name is Prince Alaric. He is the prince of the Night Empire, so he's on the evil side, and he is tasked with being the one leading the Night Empire's army, using his dark power to eradicate all opposers and to eradicate all users of light magic. And so we have our female light, our male dark, and they are polar opposites. However, when their powers are combined, it has the force of a million suns basically to create something completely new and completely devastating. Now, even though they are supposed to be enemies and they are supposed to be fighting each other, there is a greater third threat to each of their existences. And so they have to combine their power, put aside their hatred, so that they can defeat this third enemy. Now, If this premise sounds familiar to you, that's because it sounds a lot like Shadow and Bone. In the Shadow and Bone trilogy, you have the Darkling, who has dark powers, and then you have Alina, who has the power of the Sun Summoner, light power, and you kind of have a kind of Hurricane War-esque feature, which is the rift that separates the two Ravkas, or is it Ravka and Novakabris? I haven't read Shadow and Bone. I just watched the show. It's on my TBR for December, but definitely this is for fans of those who wish that the Darkling and Alina were together. It's for enemies to lovers fans. It's for those who love that villainous protagonist, the hate to love. That's what this is. If you've read Sarah J. Maas, you've read A Court of Thorns and Roses, this is definitely gonna give you some favor and reason. And so yeah, I'm super excited. This is also a debut author, Theo Glanzon. It is the first of a new trilogy, so I'm excited to read this because I'm a fantasy girly. I love stories like these, but I'm gonna be so sad if it ends on a cliffhanger and I have to wait for infinity to get the second book. But I don't know, I am gonna have fun. The cover is beautiful. It is just has so many good elements. I want you guys to take a great look at it. And there's a lovely map for our end papers. We love a book with a good map, and this is going to be an amazing read. I can't wait to get to it. Now, I did not read as much as I wanted to in October, and I did not hit my reading goals because I was really busy graduating from university. Even though my graduation was one day only, it took a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of appointments to get myself ready and organized. It was a wonderful experience, but it was exhausting. And so it was kind of sad and bittersweet as well because I had a great time at university, especially because I really loved what I was studying. I graduated with first class honors, Bachelor of Arts in English Language and Literature with Education. And as part of my literature component of my degree, I did a course in drama. I wish we had more drama focused courses, but we just had the one, which was Intro to Drama. And in Intro to Drama, we read and studied the play Oedipus Rex, or is it Oedipus, by Sophocles. Now, we did it online because this was first year of COVID 2020, and like I just remember that play being very wild, very unhinged, and a really good time. So color my surprise, color my shock when I visited Mood Alive and I visited For the Love of Reading's free bookshelf, and I came across a copy of Oedipus by Sophocles in such perfect, beautiful condition. The pages are not yellowed, there's no writing, no pages are missing, the binding is in perfect condition. It's just perfect. It's almost as if this book has never been, there aren't even any names to say this was owned by somebody in the past. And I'm just really excited to have this. This is going to be a very quick read, which is why I have it here. I'm basically just going to read it for the nostalgia and to remind myself of the plot of the play. I know I can very easily just Google it, but you know, with graduation, I'm feeling very nostalgic of my time at school, and I'm just really excited to read this. This version, Oedipus the King, is translated by Stephen Berg and Diskin Clay, Oxford University Press. It has a lot of notes in it, like half of the book is just notes, so all of this is like introductory notes, all of this, and then the rest of the book is the play up to here, and then in the end we have more notes. So this is going to be a quick read. I'm not going to read the notes much because I'm not doing it for school, I'm just doing it for pleasure. So I'm gonna skip the notes and go straight to the play, and this is definitely going to be a fun one. If you don't know about Oedipus, you need to know about Oedipus because it is unhinged. Sophocles came before Shakespeare, and dare I say, this is a little bit better than Shakespeare to me. So yeah, that's my third book on my wish list reading list for November, Oedipus the King by Sophocles. Next up, we have a very seasonal read, which is Zoe and the Forest of Secrets by Alake Pilgrim. I purchased this book more than a year ago now, and I have not read it yet because I just haven't found the right mood for it. I'm in the mood for a Caribbean folk story, a Caribbean, what do we call it? Um, yeah, a Caribbean folk story. And this is going to be really interesting because it is a middle grade book. So it's not for adults, it's for children. Even though, again, I wouldn't say it's for young children because this is a lot of pages, there are no pictures in it. But Zoe and the Forest of Secret follows a little girl, Zoe. So it says, a story don't start where we tell it, you know. When Zoe decides to run away from home, she isn't scared. After all, she knows the island like the back of her hand. But as she journeys through the once familiar forest, terrifying creatures and warped visions begin to emerge. With a beast on her heels and a lost boy thrown into her path, could a mysterious abandoned facility hold answers? Zoe must unravel the secrets of the forest before she is lost in them forever. As a child living in Trinidad, surrounded by thick mountains and jungle. I'm not saying that well, I did live in the shadow of the mountains for a long time, but if you live in the east-west corridor of Trinidad, you are never far away from the mountains. If you've gone to Maracas Beach, you've gone, you know that the mountains, the greenery, the vegetation is lush. And for a child, just imagining that, especially a child who grew up hearing Caribbean folklore, especially things like Papa Boa, your mind will go crazy. And I vividly remember as a child going through something exactly like Zoe. Like, I used to dream of getting lost in the forest and finding Papa Boa and monsters chasing me, especially on that Lady Young road. And so to have a book that for me represents my childhood exists, represents my imaginary childhood. See, I'd never ran away from home, guys. But I think this is such a precious book set in Trinidad, Trinidadian characters, Trinidadian folklore. This is such an important book. I think, and I'm so happy that it exists, and I was so stoked to own it, and I'm so ashamed that I have not read it yet. And so for sure I'm going to read it this month. That is Zoe and the Forest of Secrets by Alake Pilgrim. And guys, just look how stunning this cover is. This bind up is unreal. Kudos for Alake Pilgrim for writing this story. And the last books that I plan to read for November are part of a trilogy, and that is our Caraval trilogy. Now, just like Princess of Thornwood Drive, I would have mentioned this in my book haul, and this along with what's it called? This along with right. This along with Shadow and Bone are on my year-end TBR. I want to get to this before the year is finished, especially because I have the first book in the second series attached to this world physically on my bookshelf to read, and I want to get it in 2024. So for those of you who don't know, this is the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. The first book is Caraval, the second book is Legendary, and the third book is Finale. And it follows this world in which every year, or is it every couple of years, I can't remember the interval, but there is a circus that appears. And we have two sisters in this book, and the elder sister, Scarlett, has always wished and dreamed to attend this circus so that she can fulfill a wish or a dream, because I think once you get entrance into the circus and you win the competition, you get a wish, something like that. But this is also a book following the relationship between sisters, similar to Princess of Thornwood Drive. So it will be really nice to read these two books, those two stories in tandem, so I can see how each author tackles that topic, because I don't have siblings, I don't have a sister, and so even though I can't necessarily relate to these topics, I always find it interesting and intriguing. And so I actually read Caraval and Legendary already several years ago. I love these stories so much that I refused to read the third book until I got a physical copy. Here we are several years later, I have physical copies and I'm super, super excited to read them. And this is what I hope to end November on. Okay, so I went through these 7 books that I want to read in November already, but I have to give an honorary mention to my current read, which is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, this was supposed to be one of the books in my Dark Academia reading vlog for October. However, because of how crazy October went, I did not get to read as much as I would have. I read 2 full books and I started reading Babel in October. And so I will still do a video talking about my thoughts on those books, and I will still title it like more moody as opposed to Dark Academia. But because I only got to page 115 in October, this is going to carry me over into November. I'm not going to DNF this. I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm not going through it as fast as I would like, and that's purposeful because I think a lot of people like this book and would like this book, but for somebody like me, it holds even deeper meaning. And when I say somebody like me, I mean a person who is a subject of colonial past, a person who is a subject of colonial history. I am from and I live in Trinidad and Tobago, which was a former colony of the British Empire, and it is spoken about in a footnote, at least, in Babel, our history of colonial subjugation. And when you are a person whose history, whose founding is in colonialism, in slavery, in subjugation, then stories like this have a much deeper meaning to you, because our history, when we go to school and we do Caribbean history, that's what we learn about. Colonialism. We learn about how the indigenous people were the ones that first came, how Columbus came and he acted as if he discovered the West Indies, and well, he called it the West Indies, which was an actually inaccurate description, but we're stuck with it. He subjugated and enslaved and committed genocide on the indigenous population. When they were no longer there, the Spanish came over. They didn't last that long. And then the British came over, took over, and then they brought in enslaved Africans, indentured Chinese and Indians, and so on and so forth. And so this is what we know as our history. But the British colonial powers today, they don't really focus on that part of their history. One, because their history is so much longer, spanning so many hundreds of years, and so instead they focus on all their different kings and all their different eras, and how these things influence their particular political structure and timeline. And so when you read a book like this, at least Western readers, they get a deeper understanding of how it is for a person's entire history to be steeped in colonial subjugation. And it also has a deeper history for me, a deeper meaning for me, because this is a story of language. This is a story of linguistics. I studied language and I studied linguistics in school, and one thing that most people, whether they come from a country who has a history of colonial subjugation, or they come from a country whose country was the one committing colonial subjugation and others, i.e. the West, most people don't know about the power of language. They just know that they speak a language and it is a tool of communication. And while language is a tool of communication, it is also a tool of enslavement. I keep using this word, but it's the best word I can think of right now off the top of my head. It's a tool of subjugation. It can be used to free people, it can be used to enslave people. Language, especially when it comes to translation, is just such a game changer when it comes to power balances and who gets to keep control and who gets to maintain control. And from the very, very first chapter of this book, you see that being implemented. You see our very young character, Robin, as a boy, realizing that he can make or break somebody's life, somebody's future, based on how he uses language. And so that's what this story is about. And I like that it's titled Babel, because, and it's explained in this book, but the Tower of Babel in the Bible, mankind was trying to build this tower to God to prove how amazing they were. God confused their language and they were scattered. And so this idea that language can be used to unite a people when they speak the same language, but can also be used to separate people when they speak different languages. Languages can be a source of confusion, can be a source of division, can be a source of derision. And so all of these things are discussed in this book, and I don't want to speed through it. I want to take my time. I have been making so many notes, underlining so many points, really snapping my hands and going, yes, preach, speak, because these are the discussions that I had in school with my lecturers in class. It's making me nostalgic, just like Oedipus, and it's just so, so beautiful. Even if you're not a linguist, you're not really interested in those types of topics, I still think this book is very important for what it's doing, because it informs a lot of us on things that we don't know, things that we take for granted, something as simple as language, something that is inherent to us. It makes us take notice of it more, and it can also make each individual be more conscious of how they use language and how they use their own ability to speak and communicate to hold power over others. So that's just something to think about. That's my high horse about Babel. I haven't finished it yet, but I know this is going to be a book that is going to form a core part of my reading life and journey. So that's Babel by R.F. Kuang, most likely going to be the first book that I finish in November. Alrighty everyone, so those are all of the books that I plan to read in November. We have Princess of Thornwood Drive, Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon, Oedipus the King by Sophocles, which is translated from the Greek. Then I have all 3 books in the Caraval series, Zoe and the Forest of Secrets by Alaki Pilgrim, and I would like to finish Babel by R.F. Kuang. Tell me, have you read any of these books? Have I convinced you through these descriptions, through my excitement to read them soon, or buddy read it with me in the month of November? And if you have your own reading plans for November, tell me, what do you plan to read in the month of November? I have a video coming out soon. By the time this is up, my September wrap up, which is more than a month late, but as I told you, life has been happening in October. And then I have another video coming out, my reworked mood / dark academia reading vlog, reading review video. So look out for those 2 videos, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Bye.